Earth's most remarkable survivors, the tardigrade. These tiny creatures, no larger than a grain of sand, hold secrets that have captivated scientists for centuries. So settle in, close your eyes, and let us tell you the extraordinary tale of the water bear. The beginning, a microscopic marvel. Fact 1. The discovery of a tiny giant. Our story begins in 1773, when a German pastor named Johann August Ephraim Guss peered through his microscope and discovered something extraordinary. Among the droplets of water clinging to moss, he observed tiny creatures that moved with a bear-like waddle. He called them kleiner Wasserbar, or little water bear, and thus humanity's fascination with tardigrades began. These microscopic animals, barely visible to the naked eye, would eventually reveal themselves to be among the toughest organisms on our planet. Fact 2. A name that means slow walker. 3 years after Guss' discovery, Italian biologist Lazzaro Spallanzani encountered these same creatures and gave them the scientific name we use today, tardigrade, meaning slow walkers in Latin. As Spallanzani watched them lumber through their watery world on 8 stubby legs, he was struck by their deliberate, unhurried pace. In the microscopic realm where most creatures dart and dash, tardigrades moved with a peaceful determination that seemed almost meditative, taking their time as they navigated the forests of moss and lichen that made up their universe. Fact 3. More than 1,000 species. As scientists continued to study these remarkable creatures over the centuries, they discovered that water bears were far more diverse than anyone had imagined. Today, we know of more than 1,300 species of tardigrades, each adapted to their own unique environments. Some prefer the cold Antarctic ice, while others thrive in tropical rainforests. Some make their homes in the deepest ocean trenches, and others in the highest mountain peaks. Despite their differences, all tardigrades share the same basic body plan that has served them well for hundreds of millions of years. Fact 4. Ancient survivors from the Cambrian. The tardigrade story stretches back through the vast depths of time. Fossil evidence suggests that these tiny creatures have been walking Earth's surface for at least 530 million years, since the Cambrian period when life was just beginning to flourish in remarkable new forms. While dinosaurs came and went, while continents drifted and mountains rose and fell, tardigrades persisted. They witnessed the birth of flowering plants, the first steps of animals onto land, and countless mass extinctions that wiped out most life on Earth. Through it all, the humble water bear endured. Fact 5. Smaller than a pinhead. To truly appreciate tardigrades, we must understand their scale. Most species measure between 0.3 and 0.5 millimeters in length, smaller than the period at the end of this sentence. The largest tardigrades barely reach 1.5 millimeters, still small enough to fit comfortably on the head of a pin. Despite their diminutive size, these creatures possess complete digestive systems, nervous systems, and muscular systems. They are not simple organisms but complex animals compressed into an almost impossibly tiny package. Fact 6. 8 legs for walking. When you observe a tardigrade under a microscope, one of the first things you notice is their distinctive locomotion. Each tardigrade has 8 stumpy legs arranged in 4 pairs along their segmented body. Unlike the jointed legs of insects, tardigrade legs end in claws or adhesive discs that help them grip their substrate. As they walk, they move their legs in a coordinated pattern similar to insects many times their size, creating that characteristic bear-like waddle that so charmed Johann Goose centuries ago. This deliberate movement serves them well as they navigate the thin films of water between moss leaves and soil particles. Fact 7. A body of 5 segments. The tardigrade's body is a marvel of efficient design, divided into 5 distinct segments. The first segment forms the head, which houses their brain and sensory organs. The next 4 segments each bear a pair of legs, creating a symmetrical form that has remained largely unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. This segmentation is covered by a cuticle, a protective outer layer that the tardigrade must periodically molt as it grows. In their simplicity lies their success, a body plan so effective that evolution has seen little reason to alter it across vast spans of time. Fact 8. Living in a film of water. To understand where tardigrades live, imagine the hidden world that exists in the thin layer of water surrounding moss, lichen, and leaf litter. This is the realm of the water bear, a place measured in micrometers where surface tension creates an alien landscape. Here, tardigrades graze on bacteria, plant cells, and smaller organisms, moving through their aquatic microcosm with patient determination. They are truly aquatic animals, but their ocean is often just a film of moisture no thicker than a human hair. When this water evaporates, the tardigrade's remarkable survival abilities come into play. Fact 9. Found on every continent. From the frozen wastes of Antarctica to the steaming jungles of the Amazon, from the summit of the Himalayas to the depths of the ocean floor, tardigrades have colonized virtually every habitat on Earth. They drift through the atmosphere, carried by winds to new territories. They survive in desert sands and Arctic tundra, in hot springs and deep-sea sediments. Wherever there is even occasional moisture, tardigrades have likely found a way to thrive. This global distribution speaks to their incredible adaptability and their mastery of survival in a challenging world. Fact 10. A simple but complete digestive system. Within their tiny bodies, tardigrades possess a complete digestive system that runs from their mouth at the front to an anus at the rear. Their mouth is surrounded by a ring of sensory structures and opens to reveal a fascinating feeding apparatus. Food travels through their pharynx, a muscular tube that can create suction, then continues through an esophagus to a simple stomach and intestine. Despite their size, tardigrades are true animals with all the complexity that designation implies. They eat, they digest, they excrete waste, carrying out the fundamental processes of life in a space smaller than the eye of a needle. Fact 11. Piercing stylets for feeding. The tardigrade's mouth contains one of their most distinctive features, a pair of needle-like stylets. These sharp structures work like tiny daggers, allowing the tardigrade to pierce the cells of algae, bacteria, or other organisms to suck out their contents. The stylets are housed within the buccopharyngeal apparatus, a complex organ that the tardigrade can extend and retract. When feeding time arrives, the tardigrade extends its stylets, punctures its prey, and uses its muscular pharynx to create negative pressure, drawing the nutritious fluids into its body. It is efficient predation on a microscopic scale. Fact 12. Eyes that sense light and dark. Many tardigrade species possess simple eye spots near the front of their bodies, usually appearing as dark red or black spots when viewed under a microscope. These are not complex eyes like ours, but rather clusters of photoreceptor cells that can detect light and dark. For a creature living in the shadowy world between soil particles and moss leaves, the ability to sense light helps orient them toward or away from the sun's rays, depending on the species and their needs. Some tardigrades seem to prefer shade, while others seek out illuminated areas. These simple eyes connect them to the rhythm of day and night that governs life on Earth. Fact 13. A brain fit for survival. Compressed into the tardigrade's head segment is a genuine brain, a collection of nerve ganglia that processes information from their sensory organs and coordinates their movement. This brain is connected to a ventral nerve cord that runs the length of their body, with ganglia in each segment controlling the legs. It is a simple nervous system compared to larger animals, but it is sophisticated enough to allow the tardigrade to navigate its environment, find food, avoid danger, and reproduce. Within this microscopic package exists a consciousness of sorts, a tiny awareness responding to the world around it. Fact 14. Muscles that move mountains, on their scale. Beneath their cuticle, tardigrades possess both smooth and striated muscles that control their movement and feeding. These muscles are attached to the inner surface of their exoskeleton, and when they contract, the tardigrade takes its next deliberate step. The same muscular system powers their feeding apparatus, creating the suction needed to draw food into their bodies. For their size, tardigrades are remarkably strong, capable of pushing aside particles many times their own weight as they make their way through the soil. In their microscopic world, they are as powerful as any elephant or bear in ours. Fact 15. The hemocoel and body cavity. Unlike humans with our closed circulatory systems of arteries and veins, tardigrades have an open body cavity called a hemocoel. Their internal organs float in this fluid-filled space, bathed directly in the hemolymph that serves as their blood. Nutrients from digested food diffuse through this fluid to reach all their cells, while waste products travel back to be expelled. There is no heart to pump this fluid, no vessels to contain it. The tardigrade's movements as it walks provide enough circulation to keep their internal fluids moving, a simple solution that works perfectly at their scale. Fact 16. Male and female forms. Tardigrades reproduce sexually, and many species have distinct males and females, though telling them apart requires careful observation under a microscope. Females are often slightly larger and may be identified by the presence of eggs visible through their translucent cuticle. Males can sometimes be distinguished by specialized reproductive structures. However, reproduction in tardigrades is more complex than simple male-female pairing. Some species are hermaphroditic, possessing both male and female reproductive organs. Others reproduce through parthenogenesis, where females produce offspring without fertilization from males. In the world of water bears, reproduction has evolved many paths. Fact 17. Laying eggs in the molted cuticle. When a female tardigrade is ready to lay her eggs, she often deposits them inside her old cuticle during molting. As she outgrows her protective outer layer, she sheds it like a tiny suit of armor, but rather than abandoning this discarded skin, she uses it as a protective chamber for her developing offspring. Inside this shelter, the eggs remain safe from predators and environmental hazards while the embryos develop. It is an elegant solution, turning what would be waste into a nursery. The eggs may contain anywhere from 1 to 30 developing tardigrades, depending on the species. Fact 18. Transparent bodies revealing inner workings. One of the reasons tardigrades are so fascinating to observe under a microscope is their translucent cuticle, which allows researchers to see their internal organs in action. As a tardigrade feeds, you can watch food move through its digestive tract. As eggs develop, you can observe the embryos forming inside the female's body. This transparency has made tardigrades invaluable research subjects, living laboratories where biological processes can be observed in real time without the need for dissection or invasive techniques. They hide nothing, displaying the workings of life in miniature for anyone patient enough to watch. Fact 19. Entering the ton state. When conditions become unfavorable and the water around them begins to evaporate, tardigrades perform one of nature's most remarkable transformations. Over the course of several hours, they retract their legs and head into their body, expel almost all of their internal water, and curl into a compact barrel shape called a ton. In this state, their metabolism drops to just 0.01% of normal levels, barely a whisper of life. The ton can survive conditions that would instantly kill the active tardigrade, waiting patiently for better times. It is not death, but rather a profound pause, a biological suspended animation that can last for decades. Fact 20. Surviving absolute zero. Scientists have subjected tardigrades in their ton state to temperatures approaching absolute zero, the coldest temperature possible at -273 degrees Celsius or -459 degrees Fahrenheit. At these temperatures, molecular motion nearly ceases, and most life forms would shatter like glass. Yet when slowly warmed and rehydrated, tardigrades emerge from their tons and resume walking, feeding, and reproducing as if nothing had happened. They have also survived exposure to 151 degrees Celsius (304 degrees Fahrenheit), well above the boiling point of water. This extreme temperature tolerance makes tardigrades the most thermally resilient animals known to science, comfortable in a temperature range that spans more than 400 degrees Celsius. Fact 21. Withstanding crushing pressure. In the deepest ocean trenches, pressure reaches crushing levels that would collapse a submarine like a tin can. Tardigrades can survive pressures up to 6,000 atmospheres, far exceeding the pressure found at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. They have been subjected to experimental pressures even higher and emerged unscathed. Conversely, they can also survive in the near vacuum of space, where pressure drops to nearly nothing. Whether crushed from all sides or surrounded by emptiness, the tardigrade's body proves resilient, protected by mechanisms that keep their cellular structure intact under conditions that seem impossible for life. Fact 22, radiation that would kill us 1,000 times. Perhaps most astonishing is the tardigrade's resistance to ionizing radiation. While a dose of 5 to 10 grays of radiation is lethal to humans, tardigrades can survive exposure to 5,000 grays or more. Some species can tolerate up to 6,200 grays with no lasting damage. This extraordinary radiation resistance comes from multiple protective mechanisms, efficient DNA repair systems, proteins that shield their genetic material, and the ability to quickly fix damage to their chromosomes. When exposed to radiation that would turn a human to ash, a tardigrade can emerge ready to continue its patient walk through life. Fact 23, the protein shield called SUP. Scientists have discovered that tardigrades produce unique proteins that help protect them from extreme conditions. One of the most important is called SUP, short for damage suppressor. This protein binds to the tardigrade's DNA and shields it from radiation and other harmful agents. It's like a microscopic suit of armor wrapped around their genetic material. Researchers have even inserted the SUP gene into human cells in the laboratory, and those cells showed increased resistance to radiation damage. The tardigrade's survival secrets may one day help protect astronauts on long space voyages or aid in cancer treatment. Fact 24. Replacing water with trehalose. When a tardigrade enters its ton state, it must solve a critical problem: how to survive without water, which normally makes up about 85% of its body weight. The solution involves a special sugar called trehalose. As the tardigrade dehydrates, it produces large amounts of trehalose, which replaces the water in its cells and forms a glass-like substance that protects cellular structures from damage. This process, called vitrification, essentially freezes the tardigrade's biological processes in place without allowing ice crystals to form. The trehalose holds proteins in cell membranes in their proper shapes, maintaining the architecture of life even in the absence of life's most essential ingredient. Fact 25. Decades in suspended animation. How long can a tardigrade survive in its ton state? The record comes from a sample of dried moss collected in Antarctica in 1983. When this moss was rehydrated in 2014, 30 years after collection, some of the tardigrades within it revived and resumed normal activity. They even successfully reproduced, laying eggs that hatched into healthy offspring. While 30 years is the confirmed record, there are suggestions that tardigrades might survive even longer periods of dormancy. Imagine falling asleep and waking up 3 decades later, unchanged, ready to continue exactly where you left off. For the tardigrade, this is simply another survival strategy. Fact 26. The first animals in space. In September 2007, the European Space Agency sent tardigrades into low Earth orbit aboard the Photon M3 mission. For 10 days, the water bears were exposed to the vacuum of space, cosmic radiation, and extreme temperature fluctuations. Some were even exposed to unfiltered solar UV radiation. When the capsule returned to Earth, scientists examined the tardigrades and found that many had survived the journey. Even more remarkably, some of the females that survived the full space exposure laid eggs after returning to Earth, and those eggs hatched successfully. tardigrades had become the first animals known to survive the deadly conditions of outer space. Fact 27. Surviving 5 mass extinctions. Throughout Earth's history, there have been 5 major mass extinction events that wiped out the majority of life on the planet. The most famous occurred 66 million years ago when an asteroid impact ended the age of dinosaurs. But there were others even more catastrophic, including the Permian extinction 252 million years ago, which killed more than 90% of all species. Through all these apocalyptic events, tardigrades persisted. Their ability to enter the ton state and wait out even the worst conditions allowed them to survive scenarios that extinguished countless other forms of life. They are the ultimate survivors, witnesses to Earth's most catastrophic moments. Fact 28. Grazing on algae and bacteria. In their active state, tardigrades spend much of their time feeding. Many species are herbivores, using their piercing stylets to puncture the cells of algae and plant tissues, then sucking out the nutritious contents. The green algae that grows on tree bark, rocks, and soil provides an abundant food source. As a tardigrade moves slowly through a mat of moss, it may pierce and consume dozens of cells in a single feeding session. This grazing behavior plays an important role in microscopic ecosystems, helping to control algal populations and recycle nutrients back into the environment when the tardigrade excretes its waste. Fact 29. Some are predators and cannibals. Not all tardigrades are peaceful herbivores. Some species are fearsome predators in their microscopic realm, hunting rotifers, nematodes, and even other tardigrades. These carnivorous water bears use their stylets not to pierce plant cells but to attack other animals, piercing their bodies and consuming their fluids. In laboratory observations, scientists have documented tardigrades engaged in cannibalism, larger individuals attacking and consuming smaller members of their own species. In the competitive world of the water film, where resources can be scarce, tardigrades have evolved to exploit whatever food sources are available, even if that means becoming hunters of their own kind. Fact 30. Moving at microscopic speed. A tardigrade in motion is a study in patience. Most species travel at speeds of about 2 to 3 millimeters per hour when conditions are favorable. To put this in perspective, it would take a tardigrade roughly 20 hours to cross a single inch. Yet this glacial pace serves them well in their environment. Unlike the frantic dash of bacteria or the darting movements of protozoa, the tardigrade's slow, deliberate locomotion conserves energy and allows it to carefully navigate the complex three-dimensional maze of its habitat. In a world measured in micrometers, speed is not always an advantage. Patience and persistence often matter more. Fact 31. Claws and discs for gripping. At the end of each of their 8 legs, tardigrades possess specialized structures for gripping their substrate. Some species have sharp claws that can dig into surfaces, providing secure attachment even on vertical or upside-down surfaces. Other species have adhesive discs that stick to smooth surfaces through van der Waals forces, the same weak molecular attractions that allow geckos to walk on ceilings. These gripping structures are essential for life in the water film, where surface tension and water currents could easily sweep away a creature without secure footholds. The tardigrade's claws are its anchors, keeping it grounded in a world where everything is in flux. Fact 32. Molting to grow larger. Like insects and crustaceans, tardigrades must molt their cuticle periodically to grow. The old cuticle cannot expand, so when the tardigrade outgrows it, enzymes begin to dissolve the inner layers of the old covering. The tardigrade then pulls itself free from its old skin, emerging slightly larger and ready to grow some more. This molted cuticle is often left behind in the environment, sometimes serving as an egg case as mentioned earlier. Depending on the species and environmental conditions, tardigrades may molt anywhere from 4 to 12 times during their lifetime. Each molt is both a vulnerable moment and an opportunity for renewal. Fact 33. Sensing their world through touch and chemicals. Without sophisticated eyes or ears, tardigrades rely primarily on touch and chemical sensing to understand their environment. Their body surface is covered with sensory structures called sensilla that can detect mechanical pressure, water currents, and chemical signals. When a tardigrade bumps into an object, these sensors provide information about the obstacle's size and texture. Chemical receptors help them locate food by detecting organic molecules in the water around them. This sensory world is alien to us, a realm of touches and chemical gradients rather than sights and sounds, but it serves the tardigrade perfectly in navigating its microscopic domain. Fact 34. Lifespans measured in months. In their active state, most tardigrades live for only a few months, perhaps 3 to 6 months under ideal conditions. Some species may reach a year of active life, but this is exceptional. However, these time spans are deceptive, as they measure only active metabolism. A tardigrade that spends months or years in the tun state is not truly aging during that time. Add in periods of suspended animation, and a single individual's existence could span decades, though only a small fraction of that time would involve actual living in the traditional sense. It is a life of fits and starts, active periods separated by long pauses of waiting. Fact 35. Populations can explode. When conditions are favorable, with abundant moisture and food, tardigrade populations can grow rapidly. Females lay multiple clutches of eggs throughout their short lives, and those offspring can reach maturity and begin reproducing within just a few weeks. In a small patch of moss, hundreds or even thousands of tardigrades might be present during optimal conditions. Then, when drought returns or temperatures become extreme, this bustling community transforms into countless tons, a dormant city awaiting the return of rain. When moisture returns, the population explodes back into activity, the cycle continuing as it has for hundreds of millions of years. Fact 36. Cryptobiosis, life in hiding. The remarkable suspended animation of tardigrades is an example of cryptobiosis, literally hidden life. In this state, an organism shows no visible signs of life. There is no detectable metabolism, no movement, no growth, no reproduction. All the ordinary processes we associate with being alive have ceased. Yet the organism is not dead, because it retains the capacity to revive when conditions improve. Tardigrades are masters of cryptobiosis, but they are not alone in this ability. Certain nematodes, rotifers, and brine shrimp can also achieve this state, though generally not to the extreme degree that tardigrades manage. It is one of nature's most elegant survival strategies, allowing life to persist through times when living is impossible. Fact 37. Visible only under magnification. To study tardigrades, scientists and enthusiasts must first find them, and that requires magnification. While the largest tardigrades approach visibility to the naked eye under perfect conditions, most require at least a magnifying glass and preferably a microscope to observe clearly. Under a compound microscope at 100-400x magnification, the tardigrade's world comes into focus. You can see their individual legs moving, watch their stylets pierce cells, observe their internal organs functioning. This window into the microscopic realm has fascinated generations of naturalists, from those early German and Italian pioneers to modern researchers armed with electron microscopes that reveal details down to the molecular level. Fact 38. Collecting tardigrades from moss. Want to find tardigrades? The simplest method is to collect a sample of moss or lichen from a tree, rock, or roof. Place this sample in a container of water and let it soak for several hours or overnight. The water rehydrates any tardigrades present, bringing them out of their tun state and back to activity. Pour the water through a fine mesh or coffee filter, then examine the residue under a microscope. More often than not, you will find several water bears walking among the debris. This simple technique allows anyone with a microscope to observe these remarkable creatures, bringing the exotic world of extremophiles right into your home or classroom. Fact 39. Culturing tardigrades in the laboratory. Scientists maintain cultures of tardigrades for research purposes, keeping them in petri dishes with agar medium and providing them with algae or other food sources. Some species adapt readily to laboratory life, reproducing through multiple generations in captivity. These laboratory cultures have allowed researchers to conduct detailed studies of tardigrade biology, genetics, and behavior under controlled conditions. By raising tardigrades from eggs and tracking individual animals throughout their lives, scientists can measure growth rates, determine reproductive output, and conduct experiments on their remarkable survival abilities. The laboratory tardigrade has become as important to science as the laboratory mouse or fruit fly. Fact 40. Tardigrades under electron microscopes. When observed under scanning electron microscopes, which magnify up to 100,000 times, tardigrades reveal intricate details invisible under ordinary microscopes. The cuticle surface shows complex patterns of plates and folds. The claws on their feet appear as elegant curves with serrated edges. The mouth parts become an alien landscape of tubes and spikes. These high magnification images have revealed that tardigrade anatomy is far more complex than early researchers imagined. The humble water bear, already remarkable for its resilience, proves to be a masterpiece of miniaturized engineering when examined at the highest resolutions. Fact 41. DNA sequencing reveals ancient origins. Modern genetic analysis has revolutionized our understanding of tardigrade evolution and relationships to other animals. By sequencing tardigrade DNA and comparing it to other organisms, scientists have determined that tardigrades are close relatives of arthropods, insects, spiders, crustaceans, and nematodes, roundworms. They are part of a larger group called ecdysozoa, animals that grow by molting their outer covering. Genetic studies have also revealed that different tardigrade species diverged from each other many millions of years ago, and that some of their remarkable genes for surviving extreme conditions may have been acquired from bacteria through horizontal gene transfer, a process where DNA moves between unrelated species. Fact 42: 15% foreign DNA. In 2015, researchers announced an astonishing discovery. Approximately 15% of the tardigrade genome appeared to come from foreign sources, including bacteria, plants, fungi, and archaea. This suggested that tardigrades had acquired a massive amount of DNA through horizontal gene transfer. However, subsequent studies have questioned these findings, suggesting that much of the foreign DNA might have been contamination from microorganisms living on or near the tardigrades. The current scientific consensus suggests that while tardigrades do have some foreign DNA, it's probably closer to 1 to 2% of their genome rather than 15%. Still, even this smaller amount might contribute to their extremophile abilities, with foreign genes providing novel survival mechanisms. Fact 43: more than just moss dwellers. While most people encounter tardigrades in moss and lichen, these creatures inhabit far more diverse environments than commonly appreciated. Marine tardigrades live in ocean sediments from the intertidal zone to the deepest trenches. Freshwater species inhabit streams, rivers, and lakes. Terrestrial tardigrades can be found in soil, leaf litter, sand dunes, and even in the guts of larger animals. Some species are highly specialized, living only in specific types of moss or only at particular elevations. Others are generalists, capable of thriving wherever moisture occasionally appears. This ecological diversity reflects millions of years of evolution, with different species adapting to nearly every niche where their survival strategies can be effective. Fact 44: named after their discoverers. As new tardigrade species are discovered and described, they receive scientific names following the binomial nomenclature system. Some of these names honor the scientists who discovered them or studied tardigrades. Others refer to the creature's appearance or habitat. One species is named Echeniscus testudo because its armor-like plates reminded its discoverer of a tortoise shell. Testudo means turtle in Latin. Another is called Ramazatius oberhuseri after two prominent tardigrade researchers. These names form a catalog of discovery, each one representing hours of careful observation and documentation by researchers devoted to understanding these microscopic survivors. Fact 45: tardigrade fossils are rare but precious. Given their small size and soft bodies, tardigrades rarely fossilize. However, a few exceptional specimens have been preserved in amber, that golden fossilized tree resin that has trapped and preserved countless ancient organisms. The oldest known tardigrade fossil comes from Cretaceous amber dated to about 90 million years ago. Even at that ancient age, the fossilized tardigrade looks remarkably similar to modern species, suggesting that their body plan reached an optimal configuration long ago and has remained stable ever since. These amber specimens provide a window into ancient ecosystems, showing us that even in the age of dinosaurs, tardigrades were walking their slow walk through microscopic worlds. Fact 46: inspiring new materials. Engineers and materials scientists study tardigrades to develop new technologies for preserving biological materials. The trehalose-based vitrification that allows tardigrades to survive desiccation has inspired methods for preserving vaccines and other medicines without refrigeration. By understanding how tardigrade cells maintain their structure without water, researchers hope to create room-temperature storage systems for biological materials that currently require costly cold chains. In developing countries where refrigeration is unreliable, tardigrade-inspired preservation techniques could save millions of lives by ensuring that vaccines remain effective even in hot climates. Fact 47. Medical applications of DSUP protein. The DSUP protein that protects tardigrade DNA from radiation damage has potential medical applications. Cancer radiation therapy damages both cancer cells and healthy cells. If doctors could protect healthy tissue with DSUP-like proteins, they could increase radiation doses to tumors without harming surrounding tissue. Researchers are also exploring whether DSUP could protect astronauts from cosmic radiation during long space missions to Mars or beyond. Human cells engineered to produce DSUP show increased resistance to radiation damage in laboratory tests, suggesting that this tardigrade protein might someday protect human health in ways Johann Goose could never have imagined when he first spotted these creatures through his microscope. Fact 48. Astrobiological models. When astrobiologists speculate about the possibility of life on other planets or moons, tardigrades often feature in their discussions. If life can survive on Earth in the form of a tardigrade, withstanding conditions that approach those found on Mars or the icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn, then perhaps similar organisms exist in our solar system. Tardigrades prove that life is not as fragile as we once thought, that it can persist in seemingly impossible conditions. They have survived exposure to the space environment, showing that life could potentially travel between planets on meteorites, a process called panspermia. The water bear has become an ambassador for life's resilience in the universe. Fact 49. Teaching tool for biology. In classrooms around the world, tardigrades serve as engaging subjects for students learning about biology. Their size makes them perfect for introductory microscopy, as they're large enough to see clearly but small enough to fit under a microscope. Their extreme survival abilities captivate student imagination, making them more memorable than standard textbook examples. Many students conduct their first independent scientific investigations by collecting moss samples, extracting tardigrades, and observing their behavior. The water bear has inspired countless young people to pursue careers in biology, sparked by childhood wonder at these impossible creatures. They are ambassadors not just for life's resilience, but for the joy of scientific discovery itself. Fact 50. Israeli spacecraft crash and moon contamination. In April 2019, the Israeli spacecraft Beresheet attempted to land on the moon. The craft carried thousands of tardigrades in their ton state as part of a time capsule intended to preserve Earth life. Unfortunately, the spacecraft crashed on the lunar surface. Scientists believe the tardigrades survived the impact due to their extreme resilience, meaning there may now be tardigrades scattered across the moon's surface. However, without water and organic matter, they cannot revive or reproduce. They remain in their ton state, tiny monuments to Earth life on an alien world. This accidental contamination raised important questions about planetary protection and our responsibility to keep other worlds pristine. Fact 51. Citizen science and tardigrade hunting. You don't need to be a professional scientist to contribute to tardigrade research. Citizen science projects welcome observations and specimens from anyone with a microscope and interest in these creatures. Participants collect moss samples from their local environments, identify any tardigrades they find, and submit their observations to databases. These contributions help scientists map tardigrade distribution, discover new species, and understand how these creatures respond to changing environmental conditions. In an era when many people feel disconnected from nature, searching for tardigrades provides a hands-on way to engage with the wild world that exists all around us, invisible but present in every patch of moss. Fact 52. Tardigrade art and popular culture. The water bear has captured public imagination beyond the scientific community. Artists create tardigrade illustrations and sculptures, often emphasizing their simultaneously cute and alien appearance. They appear in science fiction stories as examples of extreme survivors. Internet culture has embraced them as icons of resilience and determination, with tardigrades appearing in memes and comics. Comic books and animated series have featured tardigrade characters. This cultural presence helps raise awareness about microscopic life and the importance of biodiversity. When people care about an organism, they become more interested in protecting the environments where it lives. The tardigrade's unlikely celebrity status benefits not just water bears but the entire microscopic realm. Fact 53. Questions still unanswered. Despite centuries of study, tardigrades still hold many mysteries. Scientists don't fully understand all the molecular mechanisms that allow them to survive extreme conditions. How do they coordinate the transition into the ton state? What triggers their revival when water returns? How do their cells repair massive DNA damage so efficiently? Why do some species tolerate more extreme conditions than others? Each answer leads to new questions, and researchers continue to probe the secrets of these tiny survivors. The tardigrade remains an enigma wrapped in a microscopic package, revealing its secrets slowly to those patient enough to investigate. Fact 54. The marine tardigrades. While most people associate tardigrades with moss and lichen, entire lineages live exclusively in marine environments. These ocean-dwelling species inhabit sediments on the seafloor, from shallow coastal areas to the abyssal depths. Marine tardigrades have adaptations for their environment, including different sensory structures and feeding behaviors. Some graze on marine algae and diatoms, while others hunt tiny invertebrates in the sand. They walk through the spaces between sediment grains, navigating a world of eternal darkness in the deep sea. Unlike their terrestrial cousins, marine tardigrades rarely face desiccation, but they must contend with pressure, cold, and the perpetual scarcity of food in the ocean depths. Fact 55. Freshwater species and their challenges. Freshwater tardigrades face unique challenges in rivers, lakes, and streams. Unlike the ocean with its stable salt concentration, freshwater environments require organisms to constantly pump out excess water that enters their cells through osmosis. Freshwater tardigrades have evolved specialized structures to manage this water balance. They also must cope with varying water chemistry, temperature fluctuations, and the seasonal cycles of their habitats. Some species inhabit ephemeral pools that dry up each summer, relying on their cryptobiotic abilities to survive until the rains return. Others live in permanent water bodies, rarely entering the tun state across their entire lives. Fact 56. Mountain dwellers at high altitude. Tardigrades have been found at elevations exceeding 6,000 meters in the Himalayas, living in moss and lichen above the tree line where few other animals can survive. At these heights, oxygen levels are low, temperatures fluctuate wildly between day and night, and UV radiation is intense due to the thin atmosphere. Yet tardigrades persist, their extremophile abilities allowing them to thrive where even hardy mountain plants struggle. These high-altitude populations may represent specially adapted ecotypes, populations that have evolved enhanced tolerance for the specific challenges of life at the roof of the world. Fact 57. Tropical rainforest tardigrades. In the humid environments of tropical rainforests, tardigrades live among the mosses and lichens that coat every surface, from tree bark to fallen logs. Here, moisture is abundant and temperatures remain warm year-round, creating stable conditions where tardigrades can remain active continuously. Tropical species often have shorter life cycles and faster reproduction rates compared to their counterparts in seasonal environments. The constant warmth and moisture mean they rarely need to enter the tun state, living their entire lives in continuous activity. Yet even these pampered tropical species retain the ability to survive desiccation, a testament to the ancient origin of this survival mechanism. Fact 58. Desert specialists. Even in deserts, tardigrades find niches where they can survive. They inhabit biological soil crusts, those delicate communities of bacteria, algae, and fungi that form on desert surfaces. When rare rains fall, desert tardigrades emerge from their tuns, feed frantically, and reproduce before the water evaporates again. These species may spend 95% of their existence in the tun state, with only brief periods of activity scattered across the years. They are adapted to extremely unpredictable environments where months or even years might pass between opportunities for active life. Desert tardigrades are masters of waiting, patient beyond measure. Fact 59. Antarctic extremophiles. In Antarctica, tardigrades inhabit moss communities in the few ice-free areas where conditions occasionally permit plant growth. These polar tardigrades endure the harshest conditions on Earth, with winter temperatures dropping below -80 degrees Celsius and summer temperatures barely rising above freezing. They must survive long periods of frozen dormancy interrupted by brief summer thaws. Some Antarctic species have been found in snow and glacier ice, possibly having survived frozen in ice for extended periods. These southern species represent the extreme edge of tardigrade distribution, life clinging to existence at the bottom of the world where almost nothing else can survive. Fact 60. Urban tardigrades. You don't need to travel to exotic locations to find tardigrades. They live in cities, thriving in the moss that grows on sidewalks, roofs, and park trees. Urban tardigrades cope with pollution, heat island effects, and disturbances from human activity, yet they persist alongside us, unseen neighbors in our concrete jungles. A sample of moss from a city roof will likely contain tardigrades that have adapted to this modern environment. They are reminders that wild nature exists everywhere, even in our most developed spaces, operating on scales we rarely notice but which are no less real for their invisibility. Fact 61. Tardigrades in your backyard. Your own yard or neighborhood park almost certainly hosts tardigrade populations. Any moss, lichen, or leaf litter provides potential habitat. That green fuzz growing on the north side of trees, the cushion of moss between paving stones, the lichen on a fence post, all are likely microecosystems supporting water bears. They've been there all along, beneath your notice, carrying out their slow lives in the thin films of water that form after rain or morning dew. To see them, you need only collect a sample and add water. The invisible world becomes visible, revealing neighbors you never knew you had. Fact 62. Seasonal activity patterns. In temperate climates with distinct seasons, tardigrade activity follows predictable patterns. They are most active during spring and autumn when moisture is abundant and temperatures are moderate. Summer droughts may force them into tons, while winter cold does the same. The life cycle of seasonal tardigrades is synchronized with these patterns, with eggs hatching in spring, rapid growth and reproduction through the favorable months, and retreat into dormancy as conditions worsen. Some species have multiple generations per year, while others complete only a single generation annually. This seasonal rhythm connects tardigrades to the same cycles that govern all life in seasonal environments. Fact 63. Complex mating behaviors. Despite their simple appearance, tardigrades engage in surprisingly complex reproductive behaviors. In species with separate sexes, males must locate females using chemical signals in the water. Courtship may involve the male following the female, touching her with his front legs, or performing specific movement patterns. In some species, mating occurs during the female's molting period, with the male depositing sperm near or inside her shed cuticle where the eggs are laid. This ensures that fertilization occurs as the eggs are being deposited. Other species practice internal fertilization, with specialized structures for transferring sperm. The details vary across species, but all require coordination between partners in a microscopic world. Fact 64. Eggs designed for survival. Tardigrade eggs are marvels of protective engineering. Many species produce eggs with elaborate shells covered in spines, ridges, or other ornamentation. These structures may help anchor the eggs to substrates, deter predators, or facilitate gas exchange. The egg shell is highly resistant to environmental stress, protecting the developing embryo from desiccation, temperature extremes, and even radiation. In some species, eggs can survive conditions that would kill active tardigrades, providing an additional layer of insurance for species survival. An egg case containing developing tardigrades is a fortress in miniature, a safe harbor for the next generation. Fact 65. Parthenogenesis in all female populations. Many tardigrade species have abandoned sexual reproduction entirely, reproducing through parthenogenesis where females produce offspring without fertilization by males. These all-female populations clone themselves, with daughters being genetic copies of their mothers. Parthenogenesis allows rapid population growth, as every individual can produce offspring without needing to find a mate. However, it reduces genetic diversity, potentially making populations less adaptable to changing conditions. Some species alternate between sexual and parthenogenetic reproduction depending on environmental conditions, maintaining the advantages of both strategies. It is another example of tardigrade flexibility, adapting even their reproductive strategy to circumstance. Fact 66. Embryonic development. Inside the egg, the tardigrade embryo undergoes a fascinating transformation. Cell division begins shortly after fertilization, and within days a recognizable tardigrade begins to take shape. The embryo develops its segments, legs, and internal organs while still protected within the eggshell. Unlike many animals that hatch as larvae looking nothing like adults, tardigrade young emerge as miniature versions of their parents, already possessing the complete adult body plan. Development time varies with temperature and species, taking anywhere from a few days to several weeks. When the young tardigrade finally breaks free from its eggshell, it is ready to begin its own slow walk through life. Fact 67. No larval stage. Most animals go through dramatic metamorphosis, with caterpillars becoming butterflies and tadpoles becoming frogs. Tardigrades skip this complexity. When they hatch from their eggs, they are tiny but fully formed water bears, possessing all the features of adults except size and sexual maturity. They simply grow through successive molts until reaching adult size, without ever changing their basic form. This direct development is more efficient, requiring less energy and fewer vulnerable transitional stages. The baby tardigrade is ready immediately to face its world, to begin feeding and growing, starting its journey with the same body design that has served its species for millions of years. Fact 68. Rapid maturation when conditions are good. When food is abundant and conditions favorable, tardigrades can mature remarkably quickly. Some species reach sexual maturity in as little as 3 to 14 days after hatching. This rapid development allows populations to explode when circumstances are optimal, producing multiple generations in a single season. Each generation can lay dozens of eggs, creating exponential population growth. This reproductive strategy is an adaptation to unpredictable environments. When good times arrive, make the most of them by reproducing as quickly as possible. Then, when conditions deteriorate, retreat into the ton state and wait for the next opportunity. Fact 69. Small clutch sizes. While some animals produce thousands or millions of offspring, tardigrades take a more modest approach. Depending on the species, a female typically lays between 1 and 30 eggs per clutch. She may produce multiple clutches during her lifetime if conditions remain favorable, but the total number of offspring per individual is relatively small. This reflects the tardigrade strategy: produce fewer offspring but invest in protecting them with resilient eggshells and, often, the shelter of the mother's shed cuticle. Quality over quantity, a reproductive strategy that has proven successful for hundreds of millions of years. Fact 70. Males are often rare. In many tardigrade populations, males are rare or entirely absent. Even in species capable of sexual reproduction, females often greatly outnumber males. This is because many populations reproduce primarily through parthenogenesis, with sexual reproduction occurring only occasionally. In some species, males have never been found, suggesting that sexual reproduction may have been abandoned entirely. This female-dominated demographic reflects the evolutionary success of parthenogenesis in stable environments where the genetic diversity provided by sexual reproduction is less critical than the efficiency of asexual reproduction. Fact 71. Genetic diversity despite cloning. You might expect that species reproducing through parthenogenesis would show very low genetic diversity, with populations being essentially clones. However, genetic studies of some parthenogenic tardigrade species have revealed surprising diversity, suggesting that these populations are not as genetically uniform as expected. This diversity might come from occasional sexual reproduction, from mutations accumulating over time, or from multiple colonization events where different clonal lineages come together. It demonstrates that even in species that have largely abandoned sex, evolution finds ways to maintain the genetic variation that allows adaptation to changing conditions. Fact 72. Ecosystem engineers at microscale. Though tiny, tardigrades play important roles in their ecosystems. As herbivores, they help control populations of algae and bacteria. As predators, they influence communities of other microscopic animals. Their waste products release nutrients back into the environment, contributing to nutrient cycling at the microscopic scale. When they die, their bodies provide food for bacteria and other decomposers. In soil and leaf litter, tardigrades are part of complex food webs that break down organic matter and maintain soil health. They are ecosystem engineers in miniature, their collective actions shaping the microscopic environments they inhabit. Fact 73. Predators of tardigrades. Despite their resilience, tardigrades are not invincible in their active state. They fall prey to various microscopic predators including carnivorous nematodes, larger tardigrades, some species of mites, and certain protozoa. Aquatic tardigrades may be eaten by small crustaceans or the larvae of aquatic insects. Even some fungi can trap and consume tardigrades. However, their ability to enter the ton state provides an effective defense against many predators. A dehydrated ton is inedible to most predators and can survive passage through predator digestive systems, potentially emerging unharmed when conditions improve. The ton state is not just protection from physical conditions but also a form of predator defense. Fact 74. Parasites and diseases. Tardigrades themselves can host parasites, with various microorganisms living on or inside their bodies. Some species of bacteria and protozoans are known to parasitize tardigrades, potentially affecting their health and survival. Certain fungi specialize in infecting tardigrade eggs. However, compared to larger animals, tardigrades appear relatively resistant to parasites and diseases. Their small size, simple anatomy, and ability to enter cryptobiosis may make them less suitable hosts for many parasites. When a tardigrade dehydrates into a ton, any parasites that cannot similarly survive desiccation will die, effectively curing the infection. Cryptobiosis becomes not just survival strategy but also immune system. Fact 75. Symbiotic relationships. Some tardigrades live in close association with other organisms in relationships that may be mutually beneficial. Certain species are found exclusively in specific moss or lichen species, suggesting co-evolved relationships. The tardigrades may benefit from the protective structure and moisture retention of their plant hosts, while potentially providing benefits through grazing on harmful bacteria or fungi. Some researchers have suggested that tardigrades might help disperse the spores of their moss or lichen hosts, carrying reproductive structures on their bodies as they travel. These potential symbioses remind us that even at microscopic scales, organisms do not exist in isolation but are embedded in networks of relationships. Fact 76. Dispersal across distances. How do tardigrades colonize new habitats separated by vast distances? The answer lies in wind dispersal. When tardigrades in the ton state are in dried moss or soil, they can become airborne, carried by winds for potentially hundreds or thousands of kilometers. Studies have found tardigrades in air samples collected at various altitudes. They drift through the atmosphere like microscopic seeds, eventually settling in new locations. When rain provides moisture in their new home, they can revive and establish new populations. This aerial dispersal explains how tardigrades have achieved global distribution and why similar species can be found on continents separated by oceans. Fact 77. Indicator species for environmental health. Scientists increasingly use tardigrades as bioindicators to assess environmental health. Different species have different tolerances for pollution, pH levels, and other environmental variables. By surveying tardigrade communities in an area, researchers can gain insights into ecosystem conditions. Declining tardigrade diversity or shifts in species composition may signal environmental degradation before it becomes obvious through other measures. Urban ecologists use tardigrades to assess the impact of pollution on urban moss communities. Conservation biologists study tardigrade populations in threatened habitats. These tiny creatures serve as sentinels, their presence or absence telling stories about environmental quality. Fact 78. Survivors of pollution. While tardigrades can serve as pollution indicators, some species show remarkable tolerance for contaminated environments. They've been found living in industrial areas, mining sites, and areas affected by heavy metal pollution, radioactive contamination, or organic pollutants. Certain species can tolerate high concentrations of toxins that would kill most other animals. This pollution tolerance varies widely among species, with some being highly sensitive while others are remarkably resistant. Understanding which tardigrade species can survive in polluted environments and which cannot helps scientists assess the severity of contamination and track ecosystem recovery after pollution is reduced. Fact 79. Climate change sentinels. As global climate changes, tardigrades may serve as early warning indicators of ecosystem shifts. Their short generation times and sensitivity to moisture patterns make them responsive to climatic changes. Researchers are documenting tardigrade distributions and abundances to establish baselines against which future changes can be measured. If climate change alters rainfall patterns or temperature regimes, tardigrade communities will likely shift in predictable ways. Arctic and alpine species may decline as their cold habitats shrink. Desert species might expand their ranges as arid conditions spread. By monitoring these microscopic survivors, scientists can track the fingerprints of climate change at the community level. Fact 80. Ancient body plan. The tardigrade body plan is ancient and has remained remarkably stable throughout their evolutionary history. Fossils from 90 million years ago look essentially identical to modern species, and molecular evidence suggests the basic tardigrade design emerged over 500 million years ago. This stability indicates that tardigrades reached an optimal solution to the challenges of microscopic life very early in their evolution. While other animal groups have diversified into countless forms, fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals, tardigrades have remained fundamentally unchanged. They are living fossils, walking witnesses to the deep history of life on Earth. Fact 81. Convergent evolution with other microscopic survivors. Tardigrades are not the only organisms capable of surviving extreme desiccation. Rotifers, nematodes, some insects, and various microorganisms have independently evolved similar abilities. This convergent evolution demonstrates that cryptobiosis is a successful strategy for surviving unpredictable environments. Interestingly, different organisms have evolved different molecular mechanisms to achieve similar results. While tardigrades use trehalose and specialized proteins, other organisms may use different protective molecules. Nature has discovered multiple solutions to the same problem, with tardigrades representing one successful approach among several. Fact 82. Adaptation through gene duplication. Genetic studies reveal that tardigrades have undergone extensive gene duplication events in their evolutionary past. When genes duplicate, one copy can maintain the original function while the other copy is free to evolve new functions. Many of the genes involved in tardigrade stress resistance appear to have originated through such duplications. Over millions of years, these duplicated genes have been modified to produce the unique proteins that protect tardigrades from extreme conditions. Gene duplication followed by functional divergence is a common mechanism of evolutionary innovation, and tardigrades exemplify how this process can produce organisms with remarkable new capabilities. Fact 83. Horizontal gene transfer debate. The possibility that tardigrades acquired some of their extremophile genes from bacteria through horizontal gene transfer remains controversial. Early studies suggested extensive foreign DNA in tardigrade genomes, but this has been disputed by later research. However, most scientists agree that at least some horizontal gene transfer has occurred. If confirmed, this would mean that tardigrades have incorporated genes from completely unrelated organisms, a form of natural genetic engineering. Whether these foreign genes contribute to their survival abilities remains uncertain, but the debate highlights how much we still have to learn about the molecular mechanisms underlying tardigrade resilience. Fact 84. Stress response genes. Tardigrades possess an impressive array of genes devoted to stress response. They produce heat shock proteins that protect other proteins from damage during stress. They have enhanced DNA repair systems that can fix broken chromosomes. They produce antioxidants that neutralize harmful molecules called free radicals. They have genes for producing protective proteins unique to tardigrades, like the SUP protein mentioned earlier. This genetic toolkit for stress tolerance is more extensive than found in most animals. It represents millions of years of natural selection favoring individuals best able to survive harsh conditions, eventually producing the supremely adapted organisms we see today. Fact 85. Evolution of cryptobiosis. The ability to enter cryptobiosis likely evolved gradually over millions of years. Early ancestors of tardigrades probably had modest abilities to survive brief dry periods. Natural selection favored individuals with better desiccation tolerance, and over countless generations, this ability was refined and enhanced. Molecular studies suggest that different tardigrade species may have enhanced their cryptobiotic abilities independently, with some species being better at surviving extreme conditions than others. This suggests that cryptobiosis continues to evolve, with natural selection constantly fine-tuning this remarkable ability in response to environmental pressures. Fact 86. Molecular mechanisms still being discovered. Despite intense research, scientists continue to discover new molecular mechanisms that contribute to tardigrade survival. Recent studies have identified novel proteins involved in protecting cell membranes during desiccation, new DNA-binding proteins that shield genetic material, and previously unknown stress response pathways. Each discovery adds another piece to the puzzle of how tardigrades survive impossible conditions. It's likely that additional mechanisms remain undiscovered, waiting for future researchers to unveil. The tardigrade keeps some secrets still, molecular strategies developed over hundreds of millions of years of evolution. Fact 87. Trade-offs in adaptation. Evolution involves trade-offs, and tardigrades are no exception. Their extreme survival abilities may come at costs in other areas. Some researchers suggest that the proteins tardigrades produce for stress tolerance might slow their metabolism or reduce their competitive ability under favorable conditions. The energy invested in maintaining the machinery for cryptobiosis cannot be used for growth or reproduction. Compared to other microscopic animals, tardigrades are relatively slow-moving and slow reproducing. These may be acceptable trade-offs for organisms specialized for surviving in unpredictable environments, where the ability to wait out bad times matters more than thriving during good times. Fact 88. Future evolution. Tardigrades continue to evolve, responding to changing environmental conditions just like all organisms. As human activities alter ecosystems worldwide, tardigrades will face new selective pressures. Urban tardigrades are adapting to pollution and modified habitats. Arctic species face pressure from warming temperatures. Agricultural intensification changes the environments where terrestrial species live. Over the coming centuries and millennia, natural selection will continue to shape tardigrade populations. Some species may thrive in human-altered environments, while others may struggle. The tardigrade story is not finished, it continues to be written with each generation. Fact 89. Most species are not threatened. Unlike many charismatic animals that face extinction, most tardigrade species appear to be in little danger. Their global distribution, enormous populations, ability to survive extreme conditions, and capacity for wind dispersal make them resilient to many threats. Individual populations might be eliminated by habitat destruction, but the species as a whole persists elsewhere. However, this doesn't mean tardigrades are immune to conservation concerns. Specialized species restricted to specific habitats may be vulnerable, and we know too little about most species to assess their conservation status accurately. Fact 90. Habitat destruction still matters. While tardigrades as a whole are not threatened, the habitats they depend on often are. Old-growth forests with their rich moss communities, pristine streams, unique desert biological crusts, these ecosystems face pressure from human activities. When habitats are destroyed, the tardigrades living there are eliminated along with all other organisms. Conserving biodiversity means protecting entire ecosystems, not just large charismatic species. The humble moss patch may seem insignificant, but it represents an entire world for tardigrades and countless other microscopic organisms. Conservation at all scales matters. Fact 91. Climate change impacts. Climate change poses challenges for some tardigrade species, particularly those adapted to cold environments. Arctic and alpine species may lose habitat as temperatures warm and glaciers retreat. Changes in precipitation patterns affect terrestrial species dependent on predictable moisture cycles. However, tardigrades' cryptobiotic abilities provide some buffer against changing conditions. They can wait out unfavorable periods in the ton state. Some species may shift their ranges, colonizing newly suitable habitats. Overall, tardigrades are likely more resilient to climate change than many organisms, but localized extinctions of specialized species are possible. Fact 92. Value beyond survival research. Tardigrades contribute to science in ways beyond their extremophile abilities. They serve as model organisms for studying animal development, aging, and basic cellular processes. Their simple body plan makes them useful for understanding fundamental principles of animal organization. Research on tardigrade evolution illuminates the origins of animal life. Studies of tardigrade ecology reveal principles governing microscopic food webs and nutrient cycling. Educational programs use tardigrades to inspire interest in biology and microscopy. Their value to science and society extends far beyond their remarkable survival abilities. Fact 93. Biotechnology applications. The biotechnology industry has taken note of tardigrade abilities. Companies are developing technologies based on tardigrade proteins for preserving biological materials, including vaccines, blood products, and donor organs. Tardigrade-inspired methods might allow shipping vaccines without refrigeration, revolutionizing medical care in developing countries. Agricultural biotechnology considers using tardigrade stress tolerance genes to develop crops resistant to drought or extreme temperatures. These applications are still in development, but they hint at how understanding tardigrades could benefit humanity in practical ways. the humble water bear may help solve some of humanity's pressing challenges. Fact 94. Space Exploration Partners. As humanity plans missions to Mars and beyond, tardigrades are being considered as biological partners for space exploration. Their ability to survive the space environment suggests they could be transported to other worlds as part of terraforming efforts or closed-loop life support systems. Some researchers propose using tardigrades in experiments on long-duration space missions to better understand how life responds to cosmic radiation and microgravity. While sending humans to Mars remains decades away, tardigrades might arrive first, microscopic pioneers exploring new worlds on behalf of Earth life. Fact 95. Ethical considerations. The use of tardigrades in research and their accidental transport to the Moon raises ethical questions. Do we have responsibilities to microscopic life? Should we avoid contaminating other worlds with Earth organisms, even resilient ones like tardigrades? How do we balance the benefits of tardigrade-inspired technologies against concerns about using animals in research? These questions have no easy answers. Most ethicists agree that invertebrates like tardigrades likely lack the sentience that would make them moral patients deserving of direct ethical consideration, but the broader questions about our relationship with microscopic life and planetary protection remain important topics of discussion. Fact 96. Inspiring wonder and curiosity. Perhaps the greatest value of tardigrades lies in their ability to inspire wonder. When people learn about these microscopic survivors, their eyes widen with amazement. How can something so small be so tough? How did evolution produce such a remarkable organism? What else exists in the microscopic world that we haven't discovered yet? This sense of wonder is precious, a reminder that the universe is stranger and more interesting than we imagine. In an age when many people feel disconnected from nature, tardigrades provide a connection to the wild world that exists all around us, invisible but present, waiting to be discovered. Fact 97. Lessons in resilience. The tardigrade teaches us profound lessons about resilience and adaptation. Life finds a way to persist even in the most challenging circumstances. Problems that seem insurmountable can be overcome with the right adaptations. Patience and the ability to wait out difficult times can be more valuable than frantic activity. These lessons apply beyond biology. Individuals facing personal challenges, communities coping with disasters, or societies navigating uncertain futures can all draw inspiration from the tardigrade's quiet persistence. We may not be able to survive the vacuum of space, but we can cultivate resilience in our own lives, adapting to our circumstances as effectively as the water bear adapts to theirs. Fact 98. The importance of microscopic life. Tardigrades remind us that the microscopic world matters. Most of Earth's biodiversity consists of organisms invisible to the naked eye. Bacteria, archaea, protists, microscopic animals, and fungi vastly outnumber visible organisms in species diversity and population size. These microscopic organisms drive nutrient cycles, decompose waste, produce oxygen, and form the base of food webs. Without them, ecosystems would collapse. Tardigrades are ambassadors for this invisible majority, charismatic enough to capture our attention and draw our gaze toward the microscopic realm. Through them, we glimpse the vast complexity of life at small scales. Fact 99. Science is an ongoing journey. The tardigrade story illustrates how science works. For 250 years, researchers have studied these creatures, and each generation has added to our understanding. Johann Guz could only describe what he saw through his simple microscope. Lazzaro Spallanzani gave them their scientific name. Later researchers discovered their extraordinary survival abilities. Modern scientists decode their genomes and send them into space. Future researchers will undoubtedly make discoveries we cannot yet imagine. Science is not a collection of fixed facts but an ongoing process of exploration and discovery. The tardigrade has more secrets to reveal, waiting for curious minds to uncover them. Fact 100, an ending that is a beginning. And so our journey through the world of the tardigrade comes to a close. We have walked alongside these microscopic survivors from their discovery centuries ago through their remarkable adaptations to their role in modern science and their uncertain future in a changing world. We have seen how 8-legged creatures smaller than grains of sand have survived for 500 million years, weathered 5 mass extinctions, endured the vacuum of space, and captured human imagination. Yet this ending is also a beginning. Each fact we have shared opens doorways to deeper understanding. Every tardigrade walking through moss in your garden carries within it the mysteries of life's resilience. As you drift towards sleep, remember that in the hidden world all around you, water bearers continue their patient walk through time, living testaments to life's extraordinary persistence. The story of the tardigrade is the story of life itself, adaptation, survival, and quiet persistence against all odds. Rest well, knowing that in the microscopic realm, life endures. Thank you for joining us on this journey with Sleepy Science Post. May your dreams be filled with wonder at the microscopic marvels that share our world. Good night, and sleep well.